Amazing. Well, so I'm interested. You talked a little bit about ayahuasca and
Yeah.
psychedelics and how that has been so meaningful in your personal growth and understanding.
Yeah.
What particularly about those experiences has changed your perspective, or like what have you found from that?
Yeah. No, it's a fair question. And m the answer, I think, has kind of two parts. There is something that I was so terrified of all psychedelics, and that was psychosis, right? Like that thing, that idea is a fixture in my family history. And it's something that I thought, boy, I don't really want to mess with that. And so it took me into my 40s before I thought, you know what? Life is not working really well. I might want to try something outside the box. And so initially, what got me into that realm, or even to try psychedelics, was not making progress on being happy any other way. And so it really was a bit fraught for me. And part of that fraught part was my partner was not on board, right? And I'd gotten to a point where I was like, well, it doesn't matter who's on board because I don't have much that I'm looking forward to. And so my first psychedelic experience was something that an executive coach actually kind of tipped me in favor of doing. I'd mentioned that I had an opportunity. We were working for about a little over a couple of months together. And it was really intense. The work was super, super intense. It was very helpful to me. And he said, I actually don't recommend psychedelics for most people. He said, especially a lot of my clients, because you guys are executives, you're mostly men, you're mostly hard driving, kind of high ego individuals. He says, and frankly, one of the biggest counterindications, or one of the biggest dangers of psychedelics, is that it does heighten a messianic complex. And for people who are already kind of super ego driven, that's not necessarily helpful. He's like, I've actually watched psychedelics put a number of my, clientele backwards in progress. He says, but with that caveat, he says, I think you're in a good place to try this. He says, and you will have me here to help you integrate. And I'd never heard that term, integrate, until he told me. And so my very first experience was 6.5 grams of mushrooms out in the wilds. And it was profound. Like the experience itself was profound. The sense, the experience in my body, the experience in my mind. I have a obviously false but vivid memory, Ken, of being at a vantage point of 200 feet in the air, looking at 3 souls on the ground and knowing that some part of me belonged to one of them, but not knowing who it was. And the feeling of that freedom and that peace was exquisite. I grew up in a family with mental illness. I struggled to manage my own kind of brain chemistry, and to experience supernal bliss and peace brought me to tears. Like I had never felt that easy in my own existence. And I was able to bring a piece of that home with me. On the other side of that, working with him and processing like the emotional texture that I experienced, even just experiencing in my own body that I had access to more emotional texture that I was, kind of walling off, really was profoundly transformative. And yeah, it just, and there were subsequent experiences. I've worked with people with substances. I've worked with people without substances. I've worked on my own using substances. And I've also found that just working with my own breath and just good old fashioned meditation, something that I've been doing since I was 13, has kind of come alive to me again as just deeply accessing a part of me that feels creative and strong and peaceful and calm and very generous towards my fellow human beings.